Hello! Thanks for tuning in to Duck Bricks. I am the Brick Archivist, and joining me today for discussion is my partner, Brick.
Hello there.
Hello, Brick. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be continuing our look at every single LEGO Star Wars minifigure ever made. Last time we took a look at the standard Phase 1 clones, including the pilots and the gunners, and today we'll be looking at the Lieutenant clones, the specialized ones from the Episode 2 movie, as well as the Bomb Squad troopers and the Horn Company troopers from the Clone Wars. So of some very interesting specialized variants here. So without further ado, let's get started with the very first one, and arguably the most interesting one, the Clone Lieutenant.
Yeah, so there's actually two different versions of this trooper. You have the one with printed legs and without printed legs. So the first one to come out was in 2013. It was the regular Clone Trooper Lieutenant with the white legs, and it only came out in a poly bag. A few years, or 2 years later, rather, in the Hailfire droid, they then came out with the Clone Trooper Lieutenant with printed legs. So this is kind of an interesting scenario where LEGO kind of just created a new figure that made an old one completely obsolete. And that can actually be reflected in the price, in the new one with printed legs going for $30 and the original one with non-printed legs going for $17 on Bricklink.
Very interesting, and yeah, you don't often see examples of this where LEGO comes out with, I believe this was a GWP exclusive purchase. I know they had some event, Star Wars Days at Legoland, where they also gave this out. But more or less, it was a pretty exclusive minifigure, pretty hard to obtain, and then just completely making it, devaluing it significantly by not only including it almost identically in a small set, but also making it better, which even further devalued it. So it went from a minifigure that was pretty rare and hard to obtain to almost useless to get compared to the newer version. One thing that I do want to note in this evolution, and we touched on this a little bit in our evolution of the normal Phase 1 troopers, is that this and the rest of the, I guess, colored specialists all kind of retain the Episode 2 style of printing. Especially because, of course, these are the ones that appeared in the Episode 2 movie. If you kind of look at the picture that we have on screen here of this trooper, the arm is pretty much all blue. There's some white, but it's basically all blue, which is pretty accurate to the figure. One of the actual few times where making the arm a solid color is pretty accurate. And yeah, overall, this seems like it's quite close to the original design. You've got the 4 dots indicating rank over here. And yeah, so what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I found these kind of interesting. I never actually got the poly bag, but I did get a few from the Hailfire droid. Obviously, I prefer the newer one in that leg printing is better than no leg printing, in my opinion.
Of course. Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with you on that. And I guess just the only minor thing in regard to accuracy is that you'll notice that these troopers have a kind of coloration of painting that goes along the side of the helmet. We know that LEGO is able to print helmets, I guess, on that side, but they chose not to do it for these ones for some reason. Yeah, that's just one minor inaccuracy of these figures. But other than that, they're pretty standard. Nice to have, and I guess maybe you can move on towards the other 3 types. Maybe tell us kind of what types are these, what do the colors mean, and what sets did they come in?
Yeah, so we have 3 different ranks, I guess you could say. You have the Captain, which is the red one, the Commander, which is the yellow one, and then we have the Sergeant, which is the green-brown color. So, starting off with the red one, this one's probably the most exclusive. It came in the new gunship, the 2013 one, and is going for the most out of these at $40. The Commander came in the new ATTE that came out that same year, and is going for $25. And the Sergeant came out in the Clone vs. Droidekas Battle Pack, also from 2013, but going for $10 because that one came in a much widely available set.
Right. What's interesting about the release of these, I think, is that 2013 was the start of, I guess, or was supposed to be a planned re-release of Episode 2 in theaters, which explains why there was a heavy set focus on Episode 2. Obviously, 2012 had Episode 1, and the year after that had Episode 3. But really, only Episode 1, Phantom Menace, got released or re-released in theaters because this was in the midst of Disney acquiring Star Wars. But during this transitory period, it was interesting to see LEGO kind of continue to follow retailers and continue along the big product push for releasing sets that tied into the theater re-releases, which never actually happened during that year.
That is interesting. I never actually heard about that.
Yeah, a bit of some weird trivia to go along with that. But again, honestly, there's not too much to discuss with these figures compared to the first one. They have the printing going all along their side of the arms, which is pretty standard. And I guess the one takeaway from this is that it's interesting to see how being in desirable sets have affected the value of these figures. Like with the gunship, obviously that one's a very highly sought after set. Gunships and Clone Wars stuff is really skyrocketing in popularity these days, so it makes sense that minifigure is so rare compared to the others. Alright, so anyways, moving on from these four, I guess we can take a look at some of the other specialist troopers, except this time they were actually released before these ones, and these ones were from the Clone Wars animated series, which explains the animated style of torso and helmet printing, and of course the Clone Wars faces underneath the helmets. Brick, why don't you kind of run us through the history of these two figures?
Yeah, so these two troopers both came in the same set. It was one of the battle packs with the speeder that came out in 2011. These are the bomber and the Horn Company trooper, going for about $8 each on Bricklink. Not a very large presence in the show. I think the bomber only came out in about one episode, and same with the Horn Company trooper, with not really any of the troopers being given their own names aside from maybe their captain.
Right. And I think this is another example of one where if they were to release it today, which I highly doubt because this is a very specialized variation of Clone Trooper, this one could really benefit from dual molded arms and arm printing, because if you look at the picture here, it's very clear that the first half of the arm is orange and the second half is in white, so it kind of makes sense that it would be dual molded these days, especially with the special Bomb Squad logo as well. One thing to note is that other than the printing of orange on white is pretty good, no really big complaints there. The one big complaint I do have, though, is the printing of the white on the helmet. And you and I both know this is a very pertinent issue of what's kind of indicative of stuff that's going on in the LEGO quality department these days. But apparently this problem persisted even back in 2011 when these came out. You can see how the white printing on the orange is just so much more faded than the white printing on the torso. It's just shows that LEGO still hasn't quite gotten that part right.
Yeah, I do find that funny because a lot of people believe that kind of LEGO's problems when it came to production of printing and quality have gotten worse over the time, especially nowadays in figures such as like the Overwatch Mercy figure. But yeah, stuff like this shows that they've been having these problems for a while now.
Yeah, and I think it's from figure to figure. And speaking of printing issue, if you look at the Horn Company figure, which funnily enough is actually not referenced as that in any official material related to the set. I believe that Brickset just references it as a Clone Trooper with green markings. But if you look at the top of his helmet, the printing isn't quite right on it. There's like very clear imperfections in the printing where like the color doesn't line up quite right, and there's some markings there. So another minor issue with the print. One thing that I do want to note is that in this case, LEGO actually was able to print this kind of the green stripe underneath or on the sides of the helmet completely full, which is something nice about it. In future Clone Trooper minifigures, that kind of space in the helmet, there's a very clear line that shows where the printing isn't quite perfect. So it's interesting in seeing, like for example, take Commander Gree, there's a clear line where it should be one solid color, but there's a seam in the helmet mold that prevents it from doing that. But it's interesting to see how, in just a different shade of green, they got it absolutely right in this minifigure and did not get it right in the other one. But of course, that's very much a nitpick.
Yeah, I do find that interesting. You can see a similar thing happen with, I believe it's the Senate Commando captains. They have two different versions of the trooper where you have that center line that can sometimes cause some difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. So I guess this kind of wraps up. This was a bit of a shorter video, but these troopers all kind of stand on their own because they're kind of highly specialized variants of them. So which is why they warranted an extra video to themselves. I guess as a whole, it's interesting to see how the Clone Wars variants, which came out before the Episode 2 ones, had printed legs and had colored printed legs, versus the other ones, which did not, except for the Lieutenant, which eventually got it. What's particularly interesting about that to me is that for these two Clone Wars minifigures, none of the actual other regular clones got printed legs, and it was only until much later where Phase 1 Clone Troopers did get printed legs. But it's almost the opposite philosophy here. Obviously, they had to print these legs because of the color. They wouldn't have if the legs were plain. But it's interesting seeing kind of how their priorities change over time. Eventually, obviously, at some point in 2013, they decided it was not necessary for these to have printed legs, and then changed their mind in 2014 when they did give them printed legs.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common debate that they go throughout the time releasing figures, in that there's just a lot of inconsistency whether to give them or whether not to give them, even across different price ranges of sets. Unlike kind of arm printing, which I feel like they're pretty consistent with, in that that's usually made for bigger sets. But leg printing, I mean, you can see with the different ranking figures that we just mentioned, coming in sets like the ATTE or the gunship, those are fairly large sets, and they still don't have leg printing. But you also see that in like the polybag, as well as the battle pack. But then the one figure that comes in the $20 or $25 Hailfire droid set, that one does have leg printing. So
Right. Yeah, it was almost changing over time, and over just 1 year had passed until they decided to make it more updated. But the good thing is, ever since that set, it seems that basically all the Clone Troopers we've gotten have had leg printing. So it seems that LEGO has officially changed their policy on that and decided to make them fully accurate. So, which is a good thing. All right, and I guess that summary about wraps up our video. Thank you again for tuning in to Duck Bricks, and catch us next time when we go over some of the very interesting variants of the 212th Legion of Clone Troopers, of course led by Commander Cody. So stay tuned for next time when we start going over that. Thanks for tuning in to Duck Bricks with me and Brick. I'm the Brick Archivist, and be sure to subscribe for more LEGO news, reviews, top 10s, analyses, comparisons, and many, many more coming very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.